Well, Jeff, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Degradation Trip is a record that means a lot to me personally, and more than 20 years after its release, I think it hasn't been talked about as much as it deserves. It's a true piece of art, and in many ways, so I think it's a little underrated. And I believe there's no one better than you to talk about the process and share some stories behind how the record was brought to life into the studio. So thank you once again for taking your time and be willing to share your perspective of the record.
Quite welcome. I look forward to sharing what I can remember of it. It's been a minute.
Yeah. Before we dive into the trip, I'd love to start with your background. What first drew you into audio engineer and production?
I've always been a fan of music, period. That's obvious from what you and I have shared in through emails. But I just, I was searching for something to do early 80s. I've been doing this 43 years now. So 44 years, whatever. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Uh, I was fortunate to get a job at a studio. My wife had an uncle that had a studio south of in South Georgia. I live in the state of Georgia,
Okay.
and so he talked to me, but I didn't want to move down there, and he gave me a couple of people's names. So I got a job in a studio, and my first gig was just making cassette copies
Okay.
for all kinds of things, mostly things like IBM and not music related at all.
Hmm.
But that was the job. But I was also allowed to hang out at night and do what I wanted to do and kind of learn things in the studio. So, but again, just the passion for music drew me into it, and I knew I wanted to do something from the on the creative side. I just didn't know what it was at that point. All of it's kind of self learned in the studio because when I started, there weren't really any schools like there
Yeah.
are now.
Nah.
But I think that's the way to learn. It's like, okay, well, how should I mic this? I don't know. Put a mic on it and see what it sounds
Just
like.
trying everything, just like me. I started to play guitar all self-taught. So what am I supposed to do? And you're gonna trying, and making mistakes, and finally you're a little bit better every day.
Well, and what's interesting is um, at my age when I like now, there's a wealth of information on YouTube. Everybody tells
Yeah.
you how to engineer and how to record and all that stuff, and some of it's good advice, some of it isn't. But that's neither here nor there. We didn't really have that. There was a chief engineer, there was a tech, and there was a production engineer, and that was it. And I learned from those guys, and I also learned by staying at night by myself and putting a radio out in the live room and putting a mic on it and saying, how do I get the signal into me?
Nah.
And all right, now how would I get it to headphones? And so you figure these things out. But I think that kind of learning, I have to have hands-on learning. It sticks with you. I mean,
Yeah.
I read the manual for an SSL console over and over, and it was just like a different language to me.
Yeah.
So you get on the board and you start doing it. It's like, oh, okay, I get it now. So that was kind of my beginnings there.
And the passion about it helps to learn faster, I think. And when you're passionate about something, it's way easier, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I feel so blessed to do this for a living because it is. Um, there's a lot of work involved in making records, but there's a lot of joy in it because the
Yeah.
music lives on and the record's done. Uh, I just in my office right now, and last year, Jerry's management sent me. They did a vinyl release of Degradation Trip.
This
Oh,
one,
you got yeah.
I
Well,
got
I
this.
see. This one looks like this.
I have this one, but in a CD. This one, small version.
Okay. I wonder. I wonder if they just did different ones for the vinyl. It's got a nice booklet and everything, and I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool. That his manager called me and said Jerry wants to make sure you get a copy. Let
Oh,
me
that's
get your.
awesome.
So that's good. And like I
Yeah.
said, the music lives on,
Yeah.
and you're a great example of that because I do think the record was kind of overshadowed by a lot of reasons, a lot of various reasons.
Yeah.
Um, and but I still get people telling me what you said today, man. That's a great record. Now I'll say in hindsight, I mean I was 38 years old. I'm 64 now. I was 38, 39 years old when I made that record, and I listen to it and I say, I wish I would have changed that in the mix.
Do you still listen to it sometimes?
I had a musician friend of mine. He said, "So you still listen to music just for enjoyment?" I says, "Absolutely. I search for stuff and I get input from younger people saying you should check this band out, and I find all kinds of great instrument. It's
Yeah,
interesting that way."
that's cool. Well, over the years, you worked on great projects. We can see on behind you is Smashing Pumpkins, Matchbox 20, Soul Asylum. Those experiences, do you feel that had the biggest impact on you as a professional?
Well, I think for a career boost was the Pumpkins record.
Yeah,
We started in '92. It came out in '93. Had a friend of mine message me the other day. Says, "You know that record's 32 years old," which is crazy to think. Yeah, that probably had the biggest impact. That kind of set off uh, different projects coming in. Then people like, I want that sound, I want this, which is to be honest with you, that's an impossible reach because there's only one Billy Corgan, there's only one
yeah,
sound of that, and that's what makes records unique. I think that kind of gets lost in the process, or got lost back in the record business days where everybody wanted, I wanted the next Nirvana, I want the next Pumpkins. Well, there's not a next one. You get
exactly.
something new and something different out of that. So, but I think that record kind of started the ball rolling. Like I said, at that point, I was I was 31 when I did that record, so fairly young. Had been working in the business for about 9 years. So it was a great score because it's a lengthy business. It's not an overnight success thing, or
Yeah.
however you want to word it. I wouldn't call it success. It's just recognition and being able to make bigger and better records.
Yeah, nice. This is more a personal curiosity out of the topic here, but how was working with Billy and especially Jimmy Chamberlain? I think he's the greatest drummer of the 90s. I mean, he's great. And how was the process of working with Pumpkins?
Oh no, I would agree about Jimmy. One of the top, 3 or 4 drummers I've worked with in making records. The process was challenging, and Billy was a challenge to work with. Billy's is real direct, and he's real uh, honest in what he wants to have happen. And the reality is a lot of discussion about that record, who played what on the record, and all this stuff. The reality was Billy was ready to make the record, and Jimmy was too. The rest of the band not so much.
Hmm.
And with the budget concerns and the time you spend in the studio, we already went way over budget making it.
Yeah.
So I see his point of view, and uh, I mean, he just knew exactly what he wanted with the record. And the counter to that was Butch Vig was amazing pleasure to work with. I just spoke to him a couple of days ago. He's been asked to write a book about the '90s grunge era that he had part of, and he said
A
I'd
big
like
part of
a big part of it. He said I would like to pick your brain, and I said, well, I'll tell you what I can remember of that, making that of the Pumpkins record. But it was a huge record. I still
Yeah,
enjoy that record.
it's a great
Um,
record.
Interesting, not directly related to this, but interesting thing about that record is it was before the loudness wars, and if you put that CD on, it's a lot quieter than any CD of modern times,
Uh,
but it still has great impact.
yeah,
So I'm proud.
I had the opportunity to see Pumpkins for the first time last year, and they're still amazing. I mean, Jimmy and even Billy, they are so tight together. The sound is awesome. I never had watched them before, and last year I got the chance to see, and it was awesome. They are still pretty good.
Well, and I know this discussion's about Jerry and all, but we broached the Pumpkins thing, and none of those songs were played to a click track, which is pretty amazing considering that they all tracked live, but we didn't keep the bass track or James's part. We didn't keep anything other than the drums. We were going for the drums, but they were all tracked live, and we'd start a click as a reference to what the tempo is, and then pull it out. So that's again that's just hats off to Jimmy and just the power and the greatness of his playing.
And back in the day, there was no Pro Tools or something like that. Was all on tape, right?
I did a lot of razor blade edits on that. A
Yeah, that.
lot. But that's how we did things. I think of it now and I think, how did we do that? But that's the only thing you could do. That was how it
Yeah,
worked.
yeah, exactly. Well, looking back at those projects, how do you feel that they influenced or helped shape your approach once you got into the studio with Jerry?
Well, it was great to work with some of the classic producers like Butch, Matt Serletic on the Matchbox 20 record. Now Matt was a young producer then and hadn't done a whole lot, but he was a very talented musician and arranger. So I could see that part of it with him. what I took from Butch, mainly his demeanor. He was always calm, always chill, and the environment around him wasn't always that way.
He
So,
looks like a chill guy.
oh yeah, and I've said it over and over. And like I said, I reached out to him, like I said, about a week ago because I saw an interview he was in, and he hit me right back, and I said that's the same Butch that's always been. I mean, we haven't talked in probably 5 years or so. Um, so, and then he invited me to the Garbage Show, which is another great band.
Yeah.
They're playing here in Atlanta in September. So, but my takeaway was just, you just learn from them. And I remember distinctly, he said, you kind of pull from all these people you work with, and then you make it your own process. And while I wasn't as calm as him at times during the Jerry record, I definitely kind of took from him that kind of aspect of it. The arrangement thing wasn't much of a help because Jerry indicated to me from day one that he wasn't going to change any arrangements. He said, I want you to cope with me, but I'm not changing the arrangements. I said, okay.
Okay, that eliminates like two questions I have after that. That's awesome.
Well, he brought me the first day that I met him. He came in and had 2 cassette tapes back in the day, cassettes, and said, "This is the record. This is all."
I still love them. I still have
Oh,
one.
I wish I had one like that on cassette. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
He said, "So let's learn these arrangements and learn these songs. This is what we're doing." And Robert Trujillo and I would sit down and we'd play the cassette and listen to it and kind of learn to arrange it. Robert really became the music director for that project, and he kind of showed Mike where everything went. It was an easy project when it was in tracking, as it was just a 3-piece.
No.
And to work with those guys, I mean, they'd already had, they were both playing with Ozzy at the time.
Yeah.
And then where Robert went on to play with, with Metallica. And super nice guy. I can't say enough about both of them, but Robert was just like a champ.
Yeah,
he never traded.
I had the opportunity to meet Mike like 10 years ago, and he's the greatest guy. He's the greatest guy. He's very polite, very nice, and I mean, I used to say that he's the coolest rock star I ever met.
I agree. He's a super cool guy. He when we first got into the record, like I said, they didn't have a ton of rehearsal time. They had some that I was aware of, but we got into the record, and every take the arrangement would be a little different. And so I said, we're going to need to, because Jerry indicated to me early on that he wanted to record the tape and not go down the Pro Tools route. Well, that didn't last but a couple of days because, like I said, the arrangements were different. And I said, well, here's the other thing we need to do. I said, we need to play to a click track. Mike says, I don't like playing to a click track. And I says, I know, but it's necessary. I said, because we're going to go back and re-record Jerry's stuff and all these stops and all this stuff. And he said, let's just do a test. I said, let's do a take of the song with the click and one without, and we'll go back and listen. So we listen. He says, yeah, the one with the click is better. He said, it's tighter. He says, I understand it. He said, I just don't like playing with a click. I said, well, most drummers don't. I said, but that's where we are. So I wound up bringing my Pro Tools rig in, and we recorded to tape. I dumped it in the Pro Tools and would edit just because it was going to be easier, because it was a little fractured and everybody kind of knowing how the arrangements went. And so it let us get through the tracking a little bit quicker. Once the tracking was done, it was just down to just me and Jerry and my good friend Tim Harkins that had helped me record the record. So it was a pretty small kind of group for the rest of the record once we got the tracks down.
These cassettes, when you got the demos, was just him playing guitar and singing, or there was any drums or bass on it?
No, that was the problem. Yeah, it was just that. It was just him and guitars. Damn. And so trying to figure out the time signature sometimes of songs and just everything. And like I said, Robert was a champ. Robert would take the cassettes and put headphones on and go in a booth and listen for an hour and say, okay, I think I know what I can play on this. So he was really a great study of that. And Mike was, Mike Borden is just a straight ahead rock drummer. He's a great rock drummer, but some of the songs, if you know the record, I know you do, or he said, they're almost country. And like my favorite song is 3132. And he said, I said, you just got to play like you're just dropping the sticks on the head. I said, you can't bash on this song. And it was a challenge for him, but he stepped up. Because there's a lot of songs that are just not straight ahead what
Yeah.
Mike was doing. I mean, here's Mike coming out of Ozzy. Same thing with Robert, but Robert was a little more freer to do what he needed to do as far as the dynamics go.
Hmm. Well, there's a lot of songs on there that's a little the country part you said. So for a guy like Mike, I think it was really hard. I mean, Fate No More, it's straightforward all the time,
Yeah.
and Ozzy, we can say enough. Well, were you involved somehow in the pre-production phase, or just, well, as I said, you got the cassettes and you guys start to track, but how did you make the basic tracks of it? Did the band play together live, or was just playing over the demos? How was that process?
Well, let me give you a little bit of the backstory that you asked the question. I had no pre-production. My manager at the time called me and said, Jerry Cantrell's looking for an engineer to engineer his record. Are you in? I said, yeah. He says he'll call you in the next couple of days. Well, the truth is that Jerry initially went with Dave Jordan, who did some Alice in Chains stuff. Great producer.
Yeah.
I think he's gone now, but passed away. But um, they just didn't gel. It wasn't working for whatever reason. So Jerry went into the next mode and looked for somebody to do that. Well, when I got involved, I was just going to strictly be engineering. Well, a couple of days into it, he says, I need somebody to, I forget Jerry's exact words, be my co-pilot or something like that.
Yeah,
And
he uses that word a lot, co-pilot. He
yes,
still does.
so in great response from a great thing for me is like, okay, then I get to co-produce a record with Jerry Cantrell. This is awesome. But again, the caveat was you can't change arrangements. So we didn't. They learned it from the cassettes. I don't know that Mike. I don't know how much Mike listened to the cassettes. I think they had some pre-production, but they went out and we tracked it all on the floor, and with the idea of getting just the drum tracks, getting their arrangements down, and getting Mike, and then we'd come back. I think on most songs we'd come back and have Robert replay the bass, and then obviously go to Jerry with the guitars. So yeah, it was all kind of done live in the studio. That, like I said, we didn't keep the stuff; it was recorded that way.
Okay. Well, we know that Chris DeGarmo played guitars on Anger Rising, but when it comes to vocals, was there any talk about bringing any other guest singer for tracks, or it was always clear that Jerry would handle all lead and backing vocal himself?
Yeah, that was it wasn't stated that way, but it never came up that let's bring somebody in. Chris is an old friend of Jerry's from Seattle days, so and actually Chris is a co-writer on Anger Rising too,
Yeah.
which is why I came in for that. But no, it was always going to be Jerry, and Jerry's an amazing singer and vocal arranger, and it just never ceased to amaze me how many parts he could come up with. And I
That
said, where
was my
did
next question about the harmonies, and that's a massive thing with Jerry, right?
he would just say, "Give me another track. I got another harmony." I said, "Well, we've got four different ones right now." He says, "Give me another one." And I said, "How did you learn to sing like this?" He said, "Being in boys' choir in school." It gave him the grounding and the basis for that. But he's amazing what the parts he would come up with, and just keep adding.
And you think it was planned out before, or was just during the sessions naturally he was putting the harmonies?
I think the second, what you say, because like I said, the cassette was just one vocal and a guitar track, maybe a double or something like that. But I just think that's just naturally what he does. One of the things he does well is come up with those great harmonies. Because the fact of the matter in my book is that magic of Alice in Chains. Part of it was those harmonies.
Yeah.
That's Jerry. That's all Jerry. So there's just some genius in what they did, and those really close kind of rubby harmonies. Those are that's what made that band have that signature sound. One of the things.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. By the way, today is it is Layne's birthday, right? Layne Staley's
Oh
second.
yeah, I think I saw that this
Yeah,
morning. Yeah.
yeah. and I think that that was the harmony, and I think they evolved somehow between facelift and dirt, the harmony parts. When you listen to facelift, there's not much vocal harmony as dirt, and after that jar of flies. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that was became their signature sound, and I'm glad Jerry kept that after in Black Gives Way to Blue with William, and I think that's amazing. I think that that one makes Alice in Chains what it is.
Yeah, and I tell you, before Layne passed away, Jerry was able to had gotten to him, was playing him some of the mixes and stuff. And when Jerry came back to L.A., he was said that Layne was very complimentary, which meant a lot to both of us, obviously, because here's a guy that was known for what he did. That being said, I think Boggy Depot is a great record too. There's some great songs on that record.
Yeah.
Great songs on that record. This is just a different record, and we set out to. He wanted to do a double record all along, and actually, I forget how many songs are on the record now. You'd have to tell me, but on the double, but
25.
25.
Yeah.
So we had 26, but I think the song was called One Eyed Jackson. We just never got the take, and I tried my best to cobble something together, and it just wasn't doing it for him. So that one kind of just went on the scrap heap. But
I do have a file, a bootleg I found some years ago on the internet. He's playing this song live. It's one I jacked, and another one, I believe it was the Unfillable Hole. And there's another one I don't remember the name right now.
oh wow, I've never heard that. The One Eyed Jack, because I distinctly remember the name of that song. That was the one that didn't make the cut.
I can send
Because
you the link with the songs. It's a live concert, and he plays like three unreleased tracks. And
yeah,
yeah,
well, the a little bit of background and history of the record. We started in July of 1999. I know you said it took a long time for you to get to Brazil, but we started in 1999, and the record was actually done and mastered by March or April 2000. And then Jerry was looking for a home because Columbia didn't want the record, and so Jerry funded the rest of the record, and then spent the 2 years, because 2002 I think is when Roadrunner signed him. So it sat around for for 2 years really, and the A&R guy at Roadrunner said, we want to have George Marino remastered. And if you know anything about mastering guys, George Marino was one of the greats. His discography goes back to the 70s, but and he's no longer with us. But I said, okay. I said, well, he said, where are the tapes, all the masters? Because we recorded it all to back to two half-inch analog tape.
okay.
That's how it mixed to. And I said, I have no idea. I said, you get in touch with A&M, which wasn't A&M Studios anymore. It became Henson. So it got convoluted. Well, they found out it was, in one of the storage facilities that they use or whatever. I forget where. And so they were going to ship the mixes, the final mixes, to New York to Sterling Sound to have it remastered. And I got a call from the A&R guy saying there were 160 reels of half-inch tape, because I did alternate mixes. I did like a vocal up, but I only did like 4. But if you think about a song like Hellbound, or not that, Pig Charmer, that's 8 minutes long or
Yeah.
whatever, you get one take on a reel. So anyway, there were 160 reels, and he said, well, FedEx, they seem to have lost those. And I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, do you have DAT backups? I said, I do, but we're not going to master off the DATs. Well, 2 days later, I got the call. Okay, they made it to Sterling Sound. We'll fly you up there, and you can sit in with George. So more adventures as the years progressed before the record actually came out. Just thought you'd find it
It's a
interesting.
huge gap between the recording and mastering everything, right? 2 years.
Well, Stephen Markison mastered it originally in 2000 and did the
Okay.
masters. It was the labels. It was Roadrunner's idea that they'd rather wanted it remastered. To be honest with you, they wanted to remix a couple of songs, and they just weren't willing to come off tip with the budget to remix.
Okay.
So we went with remastering, and I think George did a great job. Stephen did a great job too, but George did a even better job. And I remember distinctly sitting in one song, and I'm listening from the couch, and I thought, man, I wish that guitar solo was a little bit louder. And I kind of said it out loud, and George goes and tweaks something, and here it comes, up just a notch.
That's
All
nice.
right, save me on that one. So
Cool. Compared to Bog Depot, this album feels heavier overall, but also there's some surprising texture. And I mean, in Siddhartha, for example, there's a sitar-like sound. I don't know if you recall that. You remember if it was those sitar guitars or a real sitar?
Um, it may have been a choral sitar, but I don't remember, to be honest with you. It may have been a real guitar that I kind of thinned out and compressed to make it that way. I love that song. That's
Yeah,
another great. I think that chorus is just it's such a good chorus. It's just, again, it's a really long song,
yeah.
uh, and it takes a while to get somewhere. But that's definitely one of my faves on the record.
And there were songs like "Gone" and "What It Takes." I think I remember here one interview. You said he recorded with a dobro, right?
That's what Gone is. Yeah, it's a dobro, and it's not even a nice one. It was a cheap one. The guitar tech, I remember saying, if I knew you guys were going to use that, I'd have got, I'd have brought in a better dobro. And I said, it's fine. He played it like an acoustic guitar rather than like a dobro, but it's got a unique sound to it.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Well, it's well known for everybody that Jerry builds rich guitar layers. It's kind of his thing. Do you remember anything of the setups, amplifiers or cabinets? I mean, anything? I think you said once about the Bogner Shiva and the 5150, right?
Yeah, when we started the record, and that's a great question. When we started the record, Jerry had 5150s is what his rig was. And he also had the original Bogner. They call him the fish. It's got a
Yeah.
fish. Okay, you know what I'm talking about.
He's
Um,
using right. I read somewhere he used the fish right to record his new record, the I Want Blood. He went with the fish preamp.
oh, I think I read that same article. The problem with that fish preamp he had, it wasn't working. But I like Bogner's, and I'd used a Bogner on a band called Double Drive years ago. Before that, where I got, probably a year before that, the guitar player walked in with it brand new, 412 cabinet, brand new. We plugged it in, turned some knobs, and it sounded amazing. And so I told Jerry, I said, "You ever played?" I said, "I see you like Bogner." I said, "You ever played through the Shiva?" He said, "No." I said, "Let's get one in here." So we got one from a rental company, a Shiva, in the cabinet, and Jerry fell in love with them again, all over again. Bought uh, two heads and two cabinets at the end of the session. They're great solid amps. So because we recorded the tracking stuff with 5150s, he said, "Well, let's compare them," and we compared them, and he says, "Yeah, we're going to go with the Shivas." So I've always liked those. Those are my thoughts are the Bogner Shiva is what Marshall should have become as they got modern, instead of going into that whole channel switching. But Bogner did the same thing. But the Shiva is just your regular EL34,
Yeah.
just raw, nice, 100-watt amp. I love them, and that's what we used on the whole record. Bogner Shiva. We might have plugged in an orange or a couple of things for some textural
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the rhythms are Bogner Shiva through the
Uh,
Bogner. Well,
and straightforward, one left, one right, and center, or was, yeah,
that's it.
that's
That's all I
amazing.
used.
That
Yeah.
that raw experience. It's, I mean, I can define the sound of the guitar on Degradation Trip. For me, it's my favorite Jerry tone ever. I mean, everything I try to do, I'm basing on this album guitar tone, because for me it's amazing. You can, it's heavy and clean at the same time. You can hear all the nuances of it. For me, it's my reference for guitar tone.
Well, and I made another discovery on that record. When we first started recording his guitars, I was using the Beyer ribbon mics. I think they're 160s. I can't remember and just blowing up the ribbons. They just couldn't take the sound pressure level. And one of the techs at A&M came in and he said, "Man," he said, "these ribbons are just getting destroyed." He said, "There's this company called Royer that just came out, and they've got ribbon mics." And he said, "They're letting us use a couple." And he said, "They said you can't blow them up." And I said, "Well, don't hold me accountable for that because I've already blown these up." I fell in love with them. One of the reps, his name's John Jennings, came down. He and I developed a little bit of a relationship. I've got several at the studio that I have now. I used that in a 57, and that's what I did to capture those sounds. The ribbon is just the most natural sounding mic. They're modern ribbons, so they're not exactly like the old school, but the old schools couldn't take the sound pressure.
That's awesome.
So, um, that turned me on the ribbon mic. So that's a big part of that sound. And I mean, the biggest part's obviously Jerry and his playing.
Yeah.
Had so many choices of guitars. Mainly, we used the guitar that's got the cigarette burns in it. That's on that cover. Is that the GNL? That might be the. I'm looking at. No, that's the Les Paul. Mainly, we used that in his GNL, the one that had the red. I think it's called the red dress. Got a girl in a red dress or
Yeah,
something.
the blue dress. I don't know if you can see back here. I have a blue dress copy and what he calls the D trip guitar.
Oh, that
Let
yeah,
me get
that's
for
the.
you. Let me get for you.
There
You can
you
see.
go. I didn't even know they made copies. That's killer.
This is a
That's it.
replica.
That wow, Yuri, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And I have the blue dress one as well. And I have another one coming. The No War guitar.
Wow. Yeah, he like I said, we had probably 50 cars in there. The Guitar Tech, I had a rental company, and he
Okay.
had a lot of great stuff. He's the one that turned Jerry onto. There's a baritone acoustic on a couple of songs. One I can't remember one in particular.
What it
And
takes, I think.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
hear that bottom sound on the acoustic.
Jerry had one of those built and got and because he liked the baritone idea so much. The song "She Was My Girl." One of the differences was that solos played on a like a early '60s SG, and it was one take. We did the take, and I said, "What's wrong with that?" And he said, "Nothing." I said, "Okay."
That's it.
So that one song that was a one take guitar solo on, just banged it out.
That's
So
awesome.
I remember things like that because that's always fun because then you just capture that raw. You don't overthink it. He just got in there and played it, and it fits so well. That song was supposed to be on the Spider-Man soundtrack, and it didn't make it, or did it?
It does, it does.
Okay,
And by the way, I have it here.
of course you do. You are a super fan, man.
Yeah, that's only the degradation trip stuff. I have on the back all Alice in Chains stuff. There's a lot of them. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah,
You mentioned about the baritone acoustic, and on songs like Castaway, which was actually what sparked the idea for this interview, the drill sound.
yeah.
We can clearly hear there the presence of the baritone guitar. And was that guitar used frequently during the process?
We
The
use it as some texture, but I don't think it's used on a lot of the songs. There was one song, and it may have been that same song we used it on, where I took a single note he played and reversed it and did something weird with it. And I said, "Let's figure out what that sound is." I said, "I always use part elements of the song, and I'll mess them up and use them." And Jerry says, "That's that baritone." So it was pretty obvious to him. But to be honest with you, I can't remember what songs. There weren't
yeah.
that many used, but I know he liked it so much that he used it. That he bought, had him build one for him.
Yeah, it's a gold top Les Paul. It's a beautiful guitar. I think it's from Jerry Jones. I'm not
Yeah. Oh
sure.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's amazing. It's beautiful. You said about the reversing thing. Do you remember anything about Hertz down it? I think it's the only instrumental on the record,
Yep.
and pretty much on Jerry's career. I mean, he just had released before Waylon Wasp with Alice in Chains. And do you remember anything about this song specifically? I mean, there's the intro. It sounds like a octave guitar reversed that creates that huge on the beginning of it. Do you remember anything about this song? This is more like a personal curiosity again, because that sound blows my mind.
There's definitely one that I had reversed in Pro Tools. And I don't may have been several. That song had a lot of layers because it was instrumental. But and we I remember distinctly we tracked that guitars in the song at a place called the Music Grinder. The history was real quick is that A&M shut down before Henson bought it, and so we had to find a place to finish the record. Well, we wanted the Music Grinder, but they weren't available for a couple of weeks, so we went to a place called Ground Control in the Valley and recorded there for 2 weeks. The challenge there, where we were trying to do vocals, and they were building the underground subway in LA at the time, so they were exploding. There were explosions going on near us
Yeah.
that you could just feel and hear it through the mic. So that was we got out of there after 2 weeks and got to the Music Grinder, but that's where Hurt Stone It came. and just layer after layer. It's heavily layered with
Yeah.
different guitar tones and textures. It's a beautiful instrumental. I didn't know it was going to be instrumental till we got done with it, and he was, "That's it? What? No vocals? Nope."
No
So
drums?
I know.
No drums at all.
Yeah, that's it. It was all him and all his vision of it being an instrumental.
But I think the lead guitar on that song, it's pretty much like a vocal. I mean, it's so
Oh yeah,
perfect, and I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing sound and everything.
it still moves me if I listen to it. You just feel the emotion in it.
Yeah,
You just the guitar's crying, man.
it's amazing how guitar can talk, right?
Oh yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely.
Well, about another song that really intrigues me is 3132. I mean, it's a beautiful song, and that intro, all the thing, that was a 12 string acoustic guitar on the intro. Remember that?
There is a 12 string in it, but that main one playing that melody, the hammer on stuff, that's just six string, and it probably was one of the Tex guitars. Like I said, he had some great stuff, and we brought him in to do everything, the whole package, guitars and all. But I can't remember which one it was. That the other big difference on that song out of all the other songs is that's Robert playing a four string P bass on that song. Everything else he's played is five string. What was he playing at the time? I should ask you because you have all these answers.
No.
Played his five string on all the rest of it, but he said this needs a four string P bass, and the other thing is he played it with his ring finger. And I said, why are you doing that? He says, because I don't have calluses on that pad and it makes a softer sound. He says this needs to be a softer. Robert was a genius with stuff like that. So I watched him. He played it with his pinky finger. The guy's an amazing player. He's a great
Yeah,
guitar
yeah.
player. Flamenco player. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I saw
He's
one video
great.
once he playing the classic guitar.
Yes.
That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why
So that's
Metallica got him.
it. And it was an old P bass. It was I think a might have been a mid late 60s. I can't remember, but I remember at one moment of panic when I'm mixing it, and my good friend Tim Harkins that helped me with the record, he brought me back to the world. I says, I think that bass is out of tune, and he says, no, you're just too focused on this. But I love the song. The song's just it's so long. It was never going to be more than an album cut
Yeah,
because there's no way to edit it. If even if you let me change the arrangement, there's nowhere to edit it. It's just a story. It's a
yeah.
great story.
A great. The lyrics are so heavy. If you pay attention to it, it's like I don't know. It's so heavy and touched me somehow. This song. There are two songs there that really touched me, and it's 3132 and Gone. Gone for
Oh,
me,
yeah,
it's amazing,
that's the
amazing.
country-ish kind of songs.
Yeah,
If you listen to the end of 3132 when he hits that last acoustic chord, it kind of swells up into this reverb.
uh,
Had to do that because he just stopped playing. It didn't ring out well at all, and it drove me crazy in the mix. I says I got to do something to extend this and make it feel natural or a natural either way because it was just cut off. It was just not a it was one of
really.
the things he asked me, and so it's funny because that song came on. It just popped on some random playlist on Apple Music yesterday, and I thought this is fitting because I knew the interview was coming. But I had late one night, one of the girls, a couple of the girls that do answer the phones at A&M, they were into that record. So I invited them to come in and listen. We had the lights down. And we played that whole song, and one of them was crying at the end of it.
Yeah, it is a heavy song.
So it's just like that's that's a that's a lot of insight into Jerry's life. That whole record is,
Yeah,
if you really want to.
yeah, absolutely. Any other thing you remember for any curiosity or anything you want to bring up about the process of recording or anything?
Yeah, you'll love this one. I got a million of them, but you'll love this one. When it came time to do the vocals, Jerry said, I want a bed. I want to sing from a bed." He says, "Because when I did the demos, he says I did everything just laying in my bed at my house in Seattle." And my theory has always been, or my approach has always been, whatever the singer wants, whatever gets them in that mode to sing, because singing's the most difficult thing to do. I said, I'll do it. It's not, I'm not going to argue. If you want to, strip down and not wear any clothes, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do, I'll turn the lights out because I don't want to see it. But anyway, there was a futon store a couple of blocks down the road from A&M. So I sent a runner out. They said they had $99 futons. I says, go get a futon. We got it. We were able to fit it in the vocal booth, which wasn't that big of a booth. And he didn't do all the songs that way, but that's definitely one he did that way. I used a Shure SM7 on the vocals on the whole record, not the harmonies and stuff. I used something different to change the texture. But there was one song, I can't remember, when we were at the music grinder, and he was actually walking around in kind of circles in the room. And at the end of the take, he says, hey, can somebody come in and help me? I've got this cable wrapped all around me. So you go in there, and he was holding the SM7, which, those are big, chunky
Yeah.
mics. And he'd been walking around in circles, and the mic cable was wrapped all the way around his legs. So, but the vocal stuff, again, he said, I want to sing from bed. Okay, we'll get you a bed. Why not? Didn't matter to me. If it made him feel good and put him in that headspace,
Yeah.
then
All that matters is the result, right? It
absolutely.
doesn't matter the process.
Yep, exactly. The A&M is a great studio, and I had spent several years prior to that working out there, so I knew it was a good place. I wanted to work. And after they shut down to do the changeover, the guy that managed the place was still there. And so he called me and said, have you got a place to mix the record? I said, I wanted to mix it in the mix room at A&M. He says, well, we're back open coming in January.
That's cool.
So I said, well, let's book the time and do the mix there. So I was able to mix all that in the mix room. Because we had two 24-track analog machines running, I didn't want to have to go through the process of waiting for them to lock together, if you know what that means, if you understand that part of the process. So we took
Not so
those, and
much.
you got 48 tracks total, not quite because you've got time code, but you sync the machines together so that way you can get more tracks for the record. But the sync time sometimes takes a little bit. So mixing, I wanted to mix, I try to mix fast. So we dumped it all to a 48-track digital machine. So it was all on one machine coming back that way. So that was, a day and a half process because we had 25 songs, long songs,
Yeah.
and you got to dump all that stuff over. So we had two analog machines dumping into one digital machine is how it wound up before I mixed it.
Well, since you mentioned the mixing, today when you have the chance to revisit this record with modern technology, would you change anything? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about the guitar solo a little louder, but is there anything like you listen today and say, "Wow, I should change this one"?
Well, I mean, there are definitely things I go back if I hear song by song and think about it. Probably one of the biggest things that if I'm honest with myself was on some of the real mellow songs that Mike struggled with, his dynamic was kind of inconsistent. Now I didn't use any samples on the record. The guy from Yamaha Drums came down, the head of Yamaha, and said, "How did you get all that low end in that kick drum?" I said, "It's just your Yamaha kick drum, mic'd inside and outside." But I'm proud of the way the kick drum turned out. The snare, I wish I would have put a sample tucked in there just to keep that consistent hit. But at least the record's real that way,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that's what the record needed was to sound like it sounded. But there are always things as a mixer and an engineer, you always go back and listen to stuff and say you want to change stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear it on the I hear it on records that I mixed, not necessarily on records I recorded because then it gets out of your hand, but out of your hands. But I don't know specifics. The song "Solitude" I'm kind of proud of because I wanted it to sound like there was a whisper going on,
Yeah.
and it's a tremolo. It's an amp farm, so it was a plug-in, but it's a tremolo, so you can hear it on there. And so that I thought I was real proud of how that turned out because it did exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to sound like he was whispering behind his actual vocal.
And that's somehow amazing and creepy at the same time. Those voices growing in the back and like, no, wow, that song's another one. Well, for me, it's pretty much all of them are my favorite songs, but Solitude's on the top five for sure.
The one song Hellbound, Jerry wanted to actually get that song to Ozzy. He wanted Ozzy to do it, and he came to me one day and he says, "I understand you don't care too much for that song." I says, "It's not my favorite song on the record." I said, "I think it takes a long time to get somewhere." He said, "Well, that's the point." And I said, "Okay, it's your record, you know."
And
Um,
the intro has like the weird tempo. It's not perfectly on click, right?
no,
Bam bam. That must be hard to record.
that and Pig Charmer were such a challenge because, well, Pig Charmer, there's all the breakdown
Yeah.
places with all the bass, which is why I pushed for a click track. The challenge in the click track though, when you have quiet bits, is the not have the click leak into the mic from the headphones. So now Pig Charmer was a cool song though, but it's so long it was going to be nothing more than an album cut. But yeah, Hellbound, it's there. It's not my favorite song on the record. There's so many songs. I'd have to look at the record now. There's so many songs that I do like that I say are my favorite records. I thought Chemical Tribe turned out really well. Um, Sonically, I think the guitars might be a little bright, but I remember that the mastering guy, Mother Spinning in Her Grave, he said, "That's a sample in the snare, isn't it?" And I says, "No."
Sounds
He said, "It
awesome.
sounds like a sample." I said, "No, it's not. It's real consistent, solid, backbeat from Mike on that one."
And that
And
vocal on the intro, for me, it's something that seems like Jerry. You think that he was laying down, and for me, it's like he was, I don't know, in some kind of hangover, mother spinning in her grave, and that's amazing.
he could capture those vibes with all the songs in his vocal approach. I said from not from day one, but when it finally first became uh, more of a completed song was "Anger Rising." I said that's got to be the first single, and of course it was. Um, Great song, but the original version was over 5 minutes long, and the record label Roadrunner called me and they said, "Can we edit that down?" I said, "I don't think so." I says, "I don't know uh, how much you can edit now on the record. Is it the full length? I don't didn't get the time.
521 and the radio added 443.
Yeah, and
I
that's the
don't
best
know.
it could be done. And that picture there, they weren't all together. They were all taken separate, and then they put them together in
Really?
Photoshop. Yeah, it was hard to get everybody together. Once, like I said, once Robert and Mike were done, they were done. I didn't see Mike again till Sabbath did that. They re-recorded some stuff, and uh, we were in the same hotel, and he came knocking on my door one night. I'm like, oh my gosh, which was crazy because this was like the year after we'd finished the record. Um, he he's an interesting drummer because he plays what I call open handed. He's a left
Yes.
handed drummer, plays right handed kit, and he would take his sticks and he had this like vise or something on his rack, and he would scrape the sticks on them to rough them up so he could hold them better like that. But again, proud of him because it's not, there's so many songs, Solitude or whatever, so many songs, 31, 32 that are just mellow songs and had to
Yes.
be that way. And you just can't put that full force in there. But he struggled a bit, but he made it happen.
Yeah, and for me it's perfect. Do you remember? I mean, you said before that the guys had done some pre-production, but do you remember anything like Jerry saying like, "Well, I don't like this part of the drums," or "Let's re-record it," or it was perfectly straightforward and let's do it. It's amazing. Let's go with that.
Mostly no, but there was one time when Jerry was wanted to Mike to play a certain beat on a certain part, so Jerry got behind the kit. Well, Jerry's not a drummer. I'm not a drummer either. And I'd never sit down behind a kit and show a drummer how to play a beat.
Yeah.
Maybe tap something out on a table or whatever. But Jerry got behind the kit and was trying to show Mike. Well, Mike got the gist of it, but for the most part, there wasn't a lot of, and maybe they discussed it when I think they had recorded a couple tracks with Dave Jordan and just bailed on it. But there may have been discussions prior to me, but there weren't really many discussions in the studio. What the parts went down, other than that one example I gave you, those were the parts, and
That's
they
awesome.
weren't really discussed or changed. And I don't know that Jerry. I don't remember him actually sitting there with any guitar parts that we did and saying, "Well, I think I need to rework this." He had a lot of that in his head and how he wanted it to go.
That's
And The an interesting anecdote was when I was mixing the record, the mix room. Most of the studios at A&M had a lounge off the studio, connected to the studio. The mix room didn't. It was a fairly small room, so you had to walk down the hallway to another room, which is the lounge for the mix room. Had a couch and TV and stuff like that. Jerry stayed. If Jerry was there at the studio, he stayed. He stayed up. Did I lose you?
No.
Oh, okay. If he was there, he stayed in the lounge. He didn't stay in the control room while I was mixing. And but he would call me from the phone down there, old phones, and say, "Hey, can you send me a mix of this one?" And so somebody would walk down the hallway, hand him a cassette that I'd mix it to, and he'd listen. And then he'd get back on the phone and says, "Turn that acoustic up in that breakdown."
What?
It was crazy. And Jerry, when he was looking for a label during the mix, he was looking at Lars. Lars Ulrich had a label. I don't know if he still does. He had it at the time, and they were old friends. They went way back.
Yeah.
And Lars came in the control room and said, "Where's Jerry?" And I said, "He's down in the lounge." He says, "Okay." He comes back a minute later and says, "You got any other ideas?" I said, "Nope." Jerry sometimes he would leave without saying anything. He was an interesting fella. Sometimes he'd just be gone. And I says, "Nope, don't know where he is." And then you talk about some remixes. The mellow stuff, I don't recall Jerry wanting me to do any tweaks on those, maybe, but I don't recall that. The heavier stuff, there was always, a couple of things. Let's turn. And this is back in the day when you have an SSL console and it's not Pro Tools. I had Pro Tools, but we were coming off the tape, where you had to actually do manual recalls of the board for every song. And the assistant engineer had to take notes on every compressor, every piece of outboard gear that was plugged in. So it was several hours getting the mix set back up to do tweaks on. It wasn't as easy as it is now. People say, "Hey, can you tweak my mix?" I said, "Yeah, it'll take me as long as it takes to open the session and do the move."
Yeah, just move
You know,
one button and
I love that about technology, but I miss analog tape, the sound of it, because it did have a softening and it had more girth to it. But that's where we are now. So.
yeah, this was out of the script I had prepared before, but how do you feel about this modern technology? Like, not about the recording, but all these amp modelers and anything like that. You have the IRs right now, and how do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I still like the sound of a big, tube amp coming through a 412 because it moves air. And that's the thing I don't hear with these amp modelers and stuff. They've gotten great, and there's with the fractals and the Kempers and stuff, and they can replicate some of that, but it's not, the speaker's not moving air. And that's the thing I have. I think there's a place for them. I think they're great sometimes to do as part guitars. I did a project with a band couple of decades ago, and the I did a record with him prior to that, and the guitar player had a high watt, great sounding high watt, and he comes in for this latest project, and he's got a line 6. He got rid of the high watt, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, you did," and it just to me that kind of stuff back then, especially early on, required so much EQing and so much manipulation to try to get it to sound like an amp, and it's almost like, why? We have amps here. So again, I think there's a place for them. I think live it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I do some work with the country singer Travis Tritt, and he plays through the fractals, and he said they're great. He said that's and there's nothing to carry around. And he said we only do weekend dates, so it just makes more sense. They're not out on the road and have a big crew and all that kind of stuff. But again, I think all technology has its place, and I always say I'm a huge Beatles fan, and I always say if the Beatles had Pro Tools, they would have used it.
Yeah.
So I've been the Pro Tools user since '95, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Sonically, it's not superior. It's come leaps and bounds from what it was when it was like 16-bit, and that Matchbox record was the first time I used Pro Tools, and so it was pretty archaic back then.
Yeah. Well, to wrap up the degradation trip conversation, looking back 20 years later, what does record represent to you personally and as a producer?
Um, to me, it's a great achievement. It was a very difficult record to make. It was a long record to make. Jerry said from the start, he said, this is probably going to take us 6 months. Well, it took us 10 months was the reality of it. We spent 12 weeks cutting before we took one break. And I was living on the East Coast at the time. So it was nice for me to get back home for the family for a while.
Yeah.
It was, again, it was a challenging record. And to be honest, there was a point where I walked away from it and said, I can't do this because it was a challenge sometimes to get Jerry to the studio, and days would go by, and there's a lot of money being spent. The studio is still
Yeah.
going to charge you because you booked it out for X amount of months. Um, and then I had some reflection time when I got home, and I said, I called his representative at the time, which was an attorney, and talked to her, and she said, I said, well, have you guys found somebody else? And she says, no. I said, all right, well, I'm back in. So I flew back out and we finished the record. Again, it was a challenging record, but it's definitely a source of pride because I know what it took to get to the
Yes.
point where we have with the record. But that's, I mean, all records are challenging in some ways, but when you talk about a record that took that long to make and then sitting on the shelf, you're wondering, like, is it ever going to come out? I'm proud of the record. Is it going to come out? And so when he got hooked up with Roadrunner, it was like perfect. Roadrunner's caveat was we're only going to put out a single album, and then we'll give you we'll put out the double album, but not initially,
Hmm.
because he always wanted it to be a double album. It was supposed to be a double album from the jump, but you know other things happened. But again, I'm super proud of it. Um, there's always things we would change on records. I
Yes.
think in hindsight, but I think it captured the moment. Mike Borden, I remember saying, he said, this is like a modern day blues record. That was his take on it.
Jerry is
So,
very influenced by blues. You can hear in pretty much all the things he does. You can hear that blues in there, right? The country and
oh,
the blues, right?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he's super talented. That's another takeaway is that I got to work with another really, really super talented artist with all three of the guys.
Yeah.
Um, our drum tech actually played percussion on it in some places, and named Walter Earl. But there wasn't any. And Chris DeGarmo, that's it. Those are the outside people on that record.
That makes even cooler.
I think so too.
That's amazing. Were you after this? You follow Jerry's work? Have you ever listened to his late releases, Brighton
Oh,
and I Want Blood?
yeah, it's awesome,
Yeah.
and even the Alice in Chains stuff. And see, I knew William from Comes the Fall. That was the band he was in prior to that, and they'd come to the studio. And when when Jerry went out, he used them as they opened for him, and then they played as his band.
Yeah.
What little bit of touring he did, but yeah, those records that Nick Raskulinecz sound amazing. They're great, great records. There's that big, huge sound, and
Yeah.
they're modern, obviously, than our record, which that's neither here nor there to me. But yeah, that solo record, oh, it's great. Jerry's just he knows how to craft a song that fits him and
Yeah,
fits his
absolutely.
moods and his vibe.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, thank you so much again for sharing your time and memories about this record. I mean, this record means a lot to many fans around the world, and myself included, as you can see. But it was amazing to hear in your perspective and incredible, uh, pretty much your perspective, and it gives us a incredible layer of understanding of how things happen. So once again, it's been an honor to talk to you, and thank you so much for your time, man.
Well, so it was so great to meet you, and let's stay in contact. We have have each other's information now.
Absolutely, I'm gonna send you the link for the concert I have with the One Eye Jack song, and there's another couple of songs that was unreleased before.
Oh yeah, please do. Thank you,
I'll,
Yuri.
I'll email you.
All right,
Jeff,
thank you
once
so much.
again, thank you so much for your time, man. It was a really pleasure to meet you and talk to you.
Thank you too, Yuri. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye bye, man. Thank you.